Hmm.
So there are billions upon billions of male chicks each year that are euthanized upon birth because nobody wants them. And this is a practice of the large-scale hatcheries.
Hey, I'm Emma, and welcome to Human Animals, the podcast where we explore the deep, complex, and often surprising relationships between people and the animals that share our world. In each episode, I'll invite a guest to dive into the bonds that unite us with the creatures we live alongside. Whether they are big or small, pets or wildlife, we'll unpack the ways animals shape our lives and challenge our understanding of what it means to be human. Join me on this journey where every episode is a reflection of the ties that bind us all. When I started this podcast, this guest is someone who I knew had to be on it. Her name is Francesca Duvall, and she's the founder and owner of Alchemist Farm, which is the world's first humane chicken hatchery. And we dive into what that exactly means in this episode. I happen to have her Serama chicks in my flock. They're super small breed of chickens that I am obsessed with. And if you've seen them on my Instagram, you might be too. She ships her chicks nationwide in the US from February to October. She loves to educate people on all aspects of chicken keeping through her website, online classes, live monthly video, chicken chats. How fun is that? As well as her social media channels, which I also happen to love. I find her reels very soothing and very informative. Her farm and hatchery run on 100% solar power. They have zero waste, and all of their packaging for their shipments of chicks is biodegradable. How cool is that? She believes there's a chicken breed for everyone and loves to hold up a light for humane treatment of chickens within her regenerative farming model. Love that. We dive all into that. And she educates in a kind and judgment-free way, opening up conversations for people of all backgrounds to come learn and shift the way they think about chickens and the natural world, which I'm all about. So hope you enjoy this sweet episode. Fun fact, I have my own small business called Miko's Choice, which is the sponsor for this episode. Because it's my business, this is my podcast, and I can make the rules. In all seriousness, though, Miko's Choice offers high-quality CBD products for all animals. Dogs, horses, pigs, cats, you name it, I have them covered. I used my background in animal science and cannabis to bring these products to life, and I'm beyond thrilled to see how they help improve animal health and wellness. They're also inspired by my personal animals and my own journey through breaking my back, recovering, and getting my dog through cancer. So there's a lot of love behind this business. Feel free to check it out at mikoschoice.com and use code HUMANANIMALS for a discount. If you have any questions, email me anytime, info@mikoschoice.com. That's MIKKOSCHOICE. Thanks. Okay, thanks for being on.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, so I reached out because I have some of your chickens. I have the little Seramas, and I am obsessed with them.
Yay!
Yeah, they're so fun, and everybody just like is so drawn to them. It's like, oh my God, what are they? They're so cute and little, and they have so much personality. And I have two roosters from you, and they're so fun to watch.
Out of all the breeds that we offer here, the Serama, I think, are my favorite too. Like, I always say that really carefully, like, don't tell the other birds if they're listening. But for people listening into this, Serama, they're one of the world's smallest breeds of chicken. They're no bigger than a can of pop, you know?
Yeah.
So of any kind of soda or bubble water. They're very small, and they're full of personality. And whenever people see them, they're like, what? Are they fully grown? And they are.
Yeah. And the chicks are just like, if the adults are that small, just imagine, guys, the chicks are so cute.
They're like the size of a quail chick. They're so itty bitty.
Yeah, they're so small. And I've noticed that the moms, because now they have started to, breed with each other, which is fine. But the moms are such good moms. Like, they are fiercely protective, which I did not expect.
They are. And it's really cute when they're broody because they're so determined. And
Yes.
they think that they could have 12 chicks under them, but they can really fit like 2, maybe 3. They have the heart for more.
Yes, they do.
I've once seen a Serama try and hatch out full-size eggs.
Oh,
She was so determined, and she sat on a full-size well summer egg, which was pretty much the size of her. And she hatched it out. It was the cutest thing. And as the chick
Oh,
got bigger and bigger, she just rose higher and higher into the air. But she still sat on top of it. It was so cute.
oh, well, good for her.
Mhm.
Not surprising, honestly, given their determination.
I'm glad you're loving them.
Yeah, I do. But yeah, I wanted to talk with you because I think that there's this really interesting fascination with chickens that people have, and they just bring out like this joy, and you could just sit there and watch them for hours. Like truly, sometimes I just stand around in the pasture and and literally just watch them, and my neighbors drive by. I'm like, I wonder what they're thinking right now because I'm just out here staring at them, and I share a lot of videos about them online, and people just are really drawn to the chickens. And I'm curious what drew you to them and what you think that connection is.
I think that connection is a deep, primal connection between humans and chickens.
Hmm.
Everyone always thinks a dog is a man's best friend.
Hmm.
And sure, there's a lot of history there of wild dogs coming closer to man way back in the day when we were first discovering fire. Also, equally long back in our history, people who were first exploring or traveling always had chickens with them
Hmm.
because they laid food. They gave us food without having to give up their bodies,
Hmm.
and they could self-replicate really fast. They require so little and they give us so much.
Hmm.
So I think in this primal part of our brain, when we see chickens, we feel comforted because we know that not eating them equals food, but they equal food because they lay us eggs. And so there's this like nervous system calm in the back of our brains. And the front of our brains, what we can actually pay attention to is like, they're really entertaining. And
Hmm.
look at those beautiful feathers. And look at these beautiful eggs. So it's hitting both of these parts of our brain that I think are really important. And they're an incredible pet that's really valuable. So that's the answer of why do I think on the greater scale of things do people love chickens? And for me, they've just always been a part of my life. And I was inspired to get some for our family and just get a small flock. And when I went to order from a hatchery, I found out about the practices of large scale
Hmm.
hatcheries and what they do to excess male chicks. And I thought, oh, I can't support that, but I want chickens. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And so that one piece in my heart led me to incubating for myself and having to order fertile eggs to figure out what I wanted to incubate. And then
Hmm.
suddenly my mind was open to this whole world of biodiversity within the chicken world. There's not just, 5 or 6 chicken breeds like maybe most people have seen. There's
Hmm.
hundreds.
Hmm. Yeah, all with crazy names, I've noticed.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
where do these come from? But yeah, that right there is one reason that I was drawn to your hatchery is because it is not like the traditional ones out there. So if you could just explain that for the listeners, that would be awesome.
Yeah, there is so much there to unpack. And the more that any of us educate ourselves about any kind of current systems that are in place within agriculture, fashion, food, whatever, there's so much, the medical system, there's so much there where it's like, gosh, how do we
Hmm.
tackle any of this? This is a
Yes.
lot. But for my little corner, my piece of the puzzle that I hold within the world of chicken hatcheries, the main practices that are employed right now are everybody wants to have hens. Very few people want to have roosters.
Hmm.
No way to tell the gender of an egg when an egg is hatched or before it's hatched. So all these eggs are set and 50-50, it's going to be a male or a female.
Hmm.
So there are billions upon billions of male chicks each year that are euthanized upon birth because nobody wants them. And this is a practice of the large scale hatcheries. And so that was the cornerstone of why I started of, I can't support that. I got to figure out something different.
Hmm.
So how I came about a solution for that is to offer the males that we have excess for people to raise for food for their families or flock protectors, and we
Hmm.
donate them. So every week we have a handful of males, and every week I have people lined up that come and pick them up or they're shipped to them. So that's number one. And number two, none of our birds are in warehouses or breeding cages. So
Hmm.
all of our adult birds are out free ranging on pasture. It's a really common practice, and it is industry standard to have birds inside in warehouses where they don't see the light of day and they
Hmm.
have artificial light on them.
Hmm.
And that's no way to live. I
No.
can't support that with my animals. I wouldn't want to be treated that way. And
Hmm.
so those aren't practices that we employ. Every single bird here is outside under sunshine every day.
Hmm.
And do we deal with predators? Absolutely. We deal with predators during the day, predators during the night. We have to
Hmm.
stay not against it. and giving
Mhm.
them possible to do this for the
Mhm.
larger scale
Mhm.
industry. Because a lot of people would say, oh, customers wouldn't pay more for chicks. Like, how could they support those practices? Because straight up, it's more expensive to do it this way.
Sure.
You know, we're not looking at our chicks, our male chicks, as like a trash item that gets thrown away. That's like so sad, you know, but that's how the
Yeah.
larger industry sees them.
Mhm.
To us, it's like, this is food. This is an opportunity. There
Mhm.
are hungry humans out there that are really grateful to have this protein source for their families.
Mhm.
So it's more effort to, of course, get creative. But we've been in business for a decade. People support us. So I hope that the larger industry takes notice and changes their practices.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine if the large hatcheries did that with their male chicks? I mean, the scale of people that would have food would be astronomical.
I think about this a lot. Like, why isn't that a thing?
Hmm.
Yes, it would cost more money. Yes, you need the land to raise the birds and then process them for production for people. And they're not like succulent table fare like you'd normally get, where it's really, you go to buy chicken from the grocery store and it's, you know, very tender. That's
Hmm.
a particular breed of chicken. It's a Cornish cross that is fully grown at 8 weeks of age. And they're really tender because they don't run around. They just kind of eat and sit. So
Hmm.
it's not
Right.
it's not like stringy or like a meat that you'd have to really cook down for a while.
Mm.
Rooster meat, you do need to slow cook. It's more like a stewing bird, or
Mm.
like you would use it for like sausages or things like that. There are creative ways. And so
Mhm.
I wish, I wish the larger industry would do it, because food insecurity is a thing that a lot of people work through.
Mhm.
And there are so many people who are having a hard time affording eating healthy. And
Yeah.
I think that there are options out there if we get creative.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I'm curious what I feel like people might have mixed reactions to that. Like I'm in a lot of these, whether it's good or bad, a lot of these chicken groups online, which are helpful sometimes when something's going wrong and you're like, oh, I have a question about this. But one heavy topic of debate is whether or not people process their backyard birds. And I would say it's probably like 50-50, what people do on there.
Mhm.
And the reactions that people have, like, because people will post, oh, I'm processing my birds today. I have this question, or look at this crazy thing that I found in them. And then those that don't comment on there and they're like, why are you posting this on the internet? Like, these are our pet, like it's just, it creates this animosity amongst everybody. But I'd be curious what you think people's reaction would be if you point this out, like, hey, we could change this industry and create some good for people. Do you think people would be open to that?
It is such a good question. And you just hit on some really important pieces right there with, first and foremost, how humans, we've been talking to each other recently. And
Yes.
it's not constructive.
No.
And it makes people frightened to share information and be able to actually educate each other and come to a place of understanding.
Hmm.
Another cornerstone of my whole approach with our farm and our business and how we share information, particularly on social media, is to always have it be a judgment-free zone. If someone comes to me with a question, I'm never going to make them feel less than or like it was stupid, or like I will always answer, and in a way that is, to the best of my ability, like respectful, and I'm going to listen. And even if we have differing opinions,
Hmm.
I'm going to make space to hear that person
Yeah.
and hope that they could do the same for me. So whenever I, like, once a year, because I don't like to hammer on this constantly of like big hatcheries are euthanizing all their male chicks. That's really dark, you know? So
Hmm.
like I'll share it once and be like, and here's how we're different, and this is why I think we're worth supporting.
Mm.
And then people say, okay, like, are you a sanctuary? Are you raising up all those birds? The answer is no. Like, I don't have 1,000 acres to raise all these birds.
Right.
I am donating to the people who 90% of the time are raising them to eat them.
Hmm.
And a lot of people get upset about that.
Yeah.
And I say, I will never lie about my practices.
Mm.
I'm going to be straight up with what we do and what makes sense to us and the
Hmm.
solutions I've found. And it's not a perfect solution,
Hmm.
but it's the best solution I have. And then people can choose to support me or not.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's how the tact I would take to with this greater industry opportunity. I mean, I am not exaggerating here when I say billions of male chicks that
Yeah.
are euthanized worldwide.
I believe it.
Europe is about to ban this practice.
Oh, really?
Yes. And so they're trying to find a solution of what can we do here. So they might be our leaders. We'll
Huh.
see.
That's cool. What are they
Yeah,
looking at?
they're trying to find the science to be able to tell the gender of eggs before they're incubated.
Oh,
And that is a very complex thing.
sounds like
So
yeah, sounds
they've
like
been working on that for over a decade and
oh,
haven't
wow.
cracked that nut yet, but it's
Yeah.
possible.
Wow.
So I think that they're trying to go that direction. So I think that people who are willing to look at our food sources with both eyes open and be realistic that people are going to keep eating meat. There and some people who like I get a lot of heat from some pretty like out there vegan folks,
Oh,
and I just remind them like, I'm not the bad guy you're looking for here. Like
right.
I'm doing everything I can to like
Yeah.
to stand up for better treatment while also knowing that some people are still going to eat meat. And I don't have any judgment on someone who wants to be vegan or someone who wants to be pescatarian or someone who is going to be paleo. Zero judgment here, as long as we're talking to each other with kindness,
Right.
and I think that people would see the opportunity there. And when they have eyes wide open to the amount of waste that's generated within this industry, I think that they would be grateful for that solution. We
Yeah.
would just need to have bigger systems in place because it's billions of chicks over a year, and then hundreds of thousands if not millions hatched weekly. And so it would need to be like multiple farms that are raising these birds because they also grow slower. They're going to be fully grown around 5 months of age, so it would be like a full-time operation. But this is already happening that people just aren't really seeing or thinking about with the Cornish crosses, with the meat bird industry. It's a
Yeah.
totally different industry than it is. Like the hatchery industry is so different than the egg industry and the meat industry within chickens. These are three very different sectors.
Right. Could you see them kind of coming together? Like these excess chicks are hatched and then are sent to like a Cornish farm?
The Cornish farms are warehouse birds that don't live past 8 weeks of age and don't go outside. These roosters that would be hatched from these heritage breeds I would hope they'd have them outside
Right. Yeah. Well,
for,
yeah.
for 5 months, and then they would be processing age. So I think that's another barrier to entry for these farms, is that it's not profitable. This would be more of we're just trying to solve a solution of food insecurity.
Right.
It would definitely need to be something that was subsidized because there's a cost to raising those birds, processing them, and then putting them into a food form that people are excited to try.
Right.
And it wouldn't be table fare. It would need to be like sausages or things like that. Something that makes it more tender. But people eat plenty of chicken apple sausage, so why
They
not?
do. Yeah, right. I'm sitting here like that is a very popular grocery store item.
It is like any kind of chicken sausage. It doesn't have to be chicken apple. It could be chicken basil.
Right.
Again, like shredded chicken for different products like tamales or like pulled pork sandwiches. It could be pulled chicken sandwiches. Like there are solutions here.
Right. Yeah, it really sounds like there just needs to be an overall paradigm shift.
Yes. And you know what? I think it's happening. I feel like people are paying attention, at least in the United States, to their food sources, what is in their food sources, everything that's been happening with Kellogg's recently. And like, why do we have different ingredients here in the States versus the same products for Europe where certain pieces are banned? Like, gosh, why can't we have the same?
Right. Yeah.
Why not this?
That's a really good point. I think it has a lot to do with this connection between like where does our food actually come from? And for some people, like in these Facebook groups, the notion of you're killing an animal is really hard for them to understand. And for me personally, like I only eat fish because I've just like never honestly liked the taste of meat. And I also do feel this sense of like guilt and about it. But I also in the same light totally support what you're talking about. And if we are going to do it, let's do it in a responsible way that is, trying to solve a problem like with these excess roosters they're living outside, ideally, at least from at your place. And let's do it like responsibly in a way that honors them and gives them a good life. And like you said earlier, people aren't going to stop eating meat. Like that's just not realistic. And yelling at people about it is not helpful.
No, it makes this polarization where people just write off anything that someone would say if they're being yelled at. Of course, their ears are going to close.
Right.
Where someone who, in your position where you don't eat red meat or any kind of meat, you're eating fish, you
Hmm.
probably have a lot of wisdom in terms of what you could offer nutritionally or what you could see in these greater systems. Same with people who are vegan. They have great wisdom around animal husbandry and how
Hmm.
animals can be treated and nutrition. And if we could just come together in a constructive way, we
Hmm.
could solve so much.
Yeah.
There's something odd in particular about social media where the algorithm ranks people who are in a disagreement higher so that other people see that conversation.
Hmm.
And so there's this like dissonance that's happening.
Right.
people people are like rewarded for treating each other poorly,
Oh
and
boy.
I don't even go into these types of groups because
Yeah.
I don't find it to be constructive. To the people who would never eat their chickens as a pet, I respect that. I have some customers who have had chickens from us from the beginning, and those birds are 14 years old
Wow.
and they're still trucking and they are pets and they would never consider eating them. And I
Mhm.
totally hear that. And I have
Mhm.
other people who have a family and they are really good at keeping their birds safe. And so they haven't been eaten by a raccoon or something like that, like they're actually
Yeah.
doing a good job.
Right. Well.
And so they've stopped laying and they're like, well, we need eggs for our family. What do we do here? And so they
Mm.
do process their birds and
Hmm.
they have that full circle experience.
Hmm.
I have no judgment on that either, because if
Yeah.
that's what that family needs to do, that's what's right for them.
Hmm.
Everybody knows their own circumstance.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I'm one of those people that can't eat my own birds, but if you can, then that's okay. Like you said, you have to do what's right for you. And I also understand that having a bird for 14 years, like they are going to stop laying eventually, and that is a cost. You have to keep feeding them and taking care of them, and some people can do that and some people can't. And that's okay.
It is this place of shaming anybody for their decisions. I don't understand where people feel okay about that
Hmm.
in their hearts to shame other people.
Right.
You know, I think there are some things that are inherently wrong. And so like even me pointing out, okay, the greater industry is euthanizing all these male chicks.
Hmm.
So like is that me doing the same thing where I'm pointing the finger? I don't know.
Hmm.
Is that me bringing to awareness an industry practice and then people can decide if they want to support it or not? Like that's how I've thought about it.
Hmm.
I try not to like speak about it in judgment, but more of like this is happening.
Hmm.
Here's a solution if you don't want to support it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly what you're doing because I've seen that video where you do talk about what you do with the roosters, and there is no, at least what I picked up from it, there is no shame or judgment or some crazy call to action like, write your senator about this. Let's go nuts. It is just like, hey, here's this information, do with it what you want. And I think that's a really good way to go about it because you are just shedding light on something. And I do think it's important to shed light on and speak up about, but there is, as we're saying, maybe a nicer way to go about it that is not so intense and turns people off.
Thank you for saying that you didn't pick up on judgment around it
Yeah. No,
because
I like that's another thing that I really like about everything that you do is that is a feeling of like all of your videos and everything that you share. Like the other day, you shared about supplemental lighting in the winter to, keep the hens laying. And the way that you phrased it was like, hey, let's have a conversation about it. What do you think? Because that is another, polarizing issue, I feel like, in the chicken world, whether you do or don't do that.
yeah, there's so many different ways that each of us can live our own lives separate from animals.
Mm-hmm.
And every human does it so differently. And then suddenly you put in animal husbandry and animal wifery into the mix. it's the same. There are so many different ways that we could all interact with our animals. I've got some customers who they have ceramics like you do, and they live inside the house and they watch
Oh my
Netflix
gosh.
with them and
Oh
they
my
sit
God.
there and they eat popcorn.
Oh my
It's a
God.
totally different relationship than what I have with my birds who
Yeah.
they don't sit on my couch and come inside, you know, like they're outside and I still
Yeah.
interact with them and they know me and they know my
Hmm.
voice and but
Hmm.
it's so different.
Yeah.
So
But
to say there's only one right way to do any of it is missing an opportunity of the diversity of this human experience.
very true. But that brought up something else that I like about you is I feel like you have so many different ways in which you view this relationship with chickens because obviously you're hatching them, you're giving them to people to eat. I think you've processed them yourself too, but then also you had that one chicken whose name I'm forgetting, who sat at your dinner table for a little bit. She was injured. What was her name?
Beatrice.
Yes. Yeah. So you've kind of like experienced all, I feel like, the sides of the chicken world.
Yeah, that's a powerful mirror you hold up for me. Thank you. I
Yeah.
haven't thought about it that way, but yeah, God gives me these different opportunities where I was like, there's no way I'm gonna have a house chicken. I can't, you know, like
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by chickens all over. I kind of joke like my house is in the middle of our property. And our farm here is where we live. And so I'm kind of surrounded by like a moat of chickens all around. It's like, there's no way they're going to come in the house too. And here she was. She needed help. She was attacked by a hawk. And
Hmm.
I chased the hawk off. And I thought for sure she had perished because she was just
Mm,
laying there,
yeah.
no breath. But I held her and like brought her close for a hug and was
Hmm.
apologizing. And she
Hmm.
took a breath and she
Mm,
came back. I was in
mm,
tears. Are you kidding me? This just happened? Okay,
yeah.
you're coming inside, Beatrice. Here we go. Put her next to the fireplace, and I warned the kids. I'm like, she was coughing a little bit of blood. Like
Mm,
maybe, I think her lungs got punctured because their lungs are on the back of their
mm,
body, and I think that,
mhm,
the hawk might have punctured them. I don't think she's gonna make it through the night. Like
mhm,
just preparing them, talking them through
mhm.
that whole process. Next morning, she's sitting there all chipper, happy next to the fireplace, didn't jump out of the box, was like, all right, what are we going to do? So she stayed in the house with us for 2 weeks and
Wow.
we let her come up to the dinner table and gave her a little spot. And
That was so cute.
yeah, she would kind of, she would talk to us from the
Mm.
box. And we're like, okay, we're not going to just give her food alone in the corner where that doesn't feel right. So, all right, come on
Sure.
up. And it was a really sweet experience. Then eventually we knew, okay, she wants to go back.
Right. Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm given the whole range of experiences here.
Yeah, and I just think that's so it's so great. And like how could anybody be mad at you when you like take a step back and you think like, wow, this person is really experiencing all the different experiences that you can have with chickens and like it's just so great. And I think really fosters a great connection with you and your customers, hopefully, because whoever they are, I feel like they should be able to relate to you and feel good in supporting you in your practices.
Yeah, thank you for seeing that. It's a wild experience to be in the public eye
Hmm.
and folks who like you who have seen what we've been up to for a little bit, you can see the greater arc of the amount of care and love and thoughtfulness that goes into what we do. And
Hmm.
some folks who are just kind of passing by and see what I'm doing maybe off of just one video that we share on Instagram
Hmm.
can cast all sorts of ideas and judgment based on that one thing and
Yeah.
then be sharing their ideas and judgments and ooh, it takes some thick skin sometimes because some people are just intense. So I'm grateful for the kind folks who really see what we're up to because with every breath we take here, with every action and choice we take, we're trying to be in integrity and respect the natural world and respect the people who are here supporting us because we're all connected.
Yeah, it's true. We are. And that's another thing I'd like to talk about is you mentioned earlier that all your birds live outside, but you also, correct me if I'm wrong, like rotate them around in the pastures or do some sort of like regenerative grazing with them, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's super interesting because people tend to think of that as like something that you do with cattle or sheep or goats, like bigger livestock. And I don't think people understand that chickens actually are really great pasture animals.
Yes, I'm smiling as you're saying this because I've been on this for a while here of
Mm.
man, people always think of cattle for regenerative ag
Hmm.
because they're leaving the nutrients to the soil and they're grazing around. Chickens can do the same. There is so much nitrogen in their droppings, and so much soil is nitrogen deficient. So much of our vegetable production is grown in soil that's depleted. And so when we think that we're eating, we're eating a tomato, this is a health food. Tomatoes can have so many, I forget how many like minerals and vitamins. It's something like 58 different minerals and vitamins in a tomato. If it's grown in soil that has those nutrients to be able to uptake. But if it's grown in depleted soil, we're only getting a couple of those nutrients. So suddenly what we think is a health food isn't nutrient dense. But if we include animals in these practices with our vegetable farming, suddenly we're not having to bring in fertilizers from different areas. We can be putting different nutrients back in the soil with them. And chickens, man, they are so great for that. It just takes a whole different mindset of doing it at scale to be able to make that happen. And I get so excited talking about this because we're proving that it's possible on a small scale here. I'm only farming on 3.65 acres. I respect the carrying capacity of my land. I don't have thousands of birds here. I have a pretty small number of my breeding groups, but each breeding group gets its own rotational pasture. So when they're in one area, I'm seeding the other area, and then I'm moving them back and forth. And the grasses that grow up, we're constantly playing with the proper grasses and the different clovers and cover crops that we put down for them. For our area, it's totally, I'm in Northern California. It could be totally different for someone in Washington or Minnesota. But what we use here, it grows up emerald green because that soil is like rich. It has everything that it needs in it. And so the birds, my goal is to keep them 365 days on green. And that takes a lot of management. We're not just keeping them in one area and locking them up, which would be so much easier, right? That is industry practice, and that's what's standard. And again, huge missed opportunity. Like these warehouses where chickens live their entire lives for either meat or egg production, they are saving the waste and then they ship it off as fertilizer for different people. But it's a pretty like yucky thing. It's all like pretty concentrated there.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to mitigate their waste, and that's awesome that they're like selling it to the vegetable farmers. But wouldn't it be so much cooler if there was a way to move in these big mobile houses, the chickens around, and then have planting behind them, and it could be like a whole year rotation.
That would be cool. Like a giant chicken tractor.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. This is how people do it who are doing it right for egg production. Like a lot of the Vital farms, I don't know if you've seen their eggs around. Like they're doing it right. Like they have certain standards of needing to be in mobile coops and things like that. So just do that at a much bigger scale. You need big acreage to do this. But gosh, it'd be so cool to do it that way.
Yeah, it's funny you bring them up. I think they are the best egg company out there because they do these practices. And they are, what I think is unique about them is they hired, small farmers or smaller farmers, and they just kind of have this like network of people working together to make this happen. And I just think that is so awesome. And like, why can't we replicate that, like you're saying, on different scales and with different industries?
Yeah, it was a big, heavy lift for them to do that. They had the vision and they were creative. And we just need to get creative because what we've been doing it's fed people in a cheap way. And people do need all different price points for their meat.
Yeah.
And I know that there's more space to be doing it right with some creativity. People just don't think about it because in their packaging, even in like eggs in the grocery store, it'll be like a picture of a carton and it'll say cage free. And it's like a bird next to grass. And you just assume, of course they're running around outside. But no, cage free just means they're not in a cage, but they're in a warehouse. Man, that's some hard marketing to get over for consumers.
Yeah. Can you talk about a little bit more about these differences? Because I think that is something that people don't really understand.
No, well-meaning people, they want to support good practices. But a lot of this just is not regulated at all.
Yeah.
And so people can write whatever they want on these cartons. They can say these things when they're selling the meat. Something just passed through the USDA, I think last month, that the company Pasture Bird has been really working on.
Hmm.
They're raising meat birds, right? They've got houses in Georgia, these huge movable solar powered houses for their meat birds. They
Hmm.
do the Cornish cross,
Hmm.
but their Cornish crosses seem to walk, which is really awesome. Like a lot of meat birds, they just don't actually move. I
Oh,
tried raising them 7 years ago and I thought never again because we ate chicken and we're like, okay, we're going to raise our own. Oh my gosh, they just
it's so
grew so
sad.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
Let's go. Do your
Yeah.
research, folks, and you can decide if you
Yeah.
want to raise those type of birds. But this company, they are doing it right, and they have been advocating for USDA regulation of the word pasture raised
Okay.
because a lot of people will use that on their egg packaging, and they'll also use it for red meat. They'll use it for chicken.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's really specific that it has to be on grass that actually is like attached to the ground and like growing and
Oh
not
my
just
gosh.
like they go out for a couple days and then they're considered pasture raised. But it's
Wow.
for the majority of their life. It's like an
Yeah.
X percentage of their life. And
Mm,
they just got this passed. So we're hopefully going to be seeing a lot less misleading packaging
that's great.
because pasture raised has been the thing that you would want to look for, particularly on eggs in the grocery store.
Hmm.
That means that they're out on green grass year round.
Hmm.
But for a lot of people and their farming practices, that just means that they're outside, which is good, not in a warehouse, but that they're in a dirt lot. They're not actually like running around free in awesome grass.
Right. Yeah. Because I think
So,
another thing is people don't understand that chickens do eat grass.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
they
And
eat grass, they eat bugs, they eat rocks. They need to. They eat little
yeah.
pebbles for the
Mhm.
digestion. People are like, "What? Why is there rocks in my chicken poo?" It's like, no, they're not unintelligent. They know what they need.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And they're so hardy. They're so hardy. Yeah, so cage free for
Cage
people.
free just means it's in a warehouse,
Mm,
never sees the light of day,
hmm.
but not cages.
Mm,
This is leagues better than birds that are in battery cages,
yeah.
which is again, we're talking billions of birds.
Mm,
There are more chickens on planet Earth than there are humans.
wow.
When I learned that,
That's a
my
lot.
mind was blown.
That's a lot of chickens.
Almost 2 to 1.
Wow.
There are billions of people on planet Earth, but that is a mind expander for a moment here. Like, let that sink
Hmm.
in.
Hmm.
2 to 1 chickens to humans, and it makes sense with how many eggs we eat and how much chicken we consume.
True.
So the eggs, when I was in college, I didn't have a lot of money. But I went out of my way to spend extra for cage-free eggs because I had that idea that it meant they were out on pasture. But after the
Mm,
research, I was like, oh man, they're still in a warehouse. Okay. So you got to go one step better and you
yeah.
got to look for the pasture eggs.
Mm,
And now even that has been a word that's hijacked that hopefully can be taken back with this new legislature that Pasture Brook is working on.
hmm.
But now regenerative is a word that for people who are trying to make it right by the land. Regenerative
Mm.
farms and Vital Farms uses that phrase a lot
Yeah,
because
they
they
just
have the
yeah.
industry standards there
Right. They just
for them.
released a line of exits that's like their main thing is their regenerative.
Yep. And I believe that they're a company of integrity. I
Yeah.
believe them. A lot of
Hmm.
these places will say things and then are they actually following up on it? It's
Hmm.
hard to know.
Hmm.
They call that greenwashing, right? Where
Yeah.
it's a certain phrases that people don't know if it actually is happening. So
Right.
the absolute best, the best if you can, is to know your farmer. Raise your own if you can, and if you can't, because not everybody has space.
Hmm.
Know the person you're supporting. Maybe it's
Hmm.
at a farmer's market.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a friend down the street, but they're grateful for your support. It creates more local food security, more local food economy. The more people are farming, the better it is for everybody. It's a smaller carbon footprint of things needing to be transported really far away.
Hmm.
So the packaging is really tricky to understand
Yeah.
on grocery store eggs. The absolute best is raise your own or know your farmer. And if you
Hmm.
can't, Vital Farms is great.
Yes, couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. Oh, yeah. I know it's like been an audio online, so maybe some people have heard it too, but What do you think about and I don't know if I'm going to say it correctly, but this fact that if every household had like 3 to 5 chickens, food waste would be drastically reduced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, yeah.
I don't know per se like the exact wording of that, but that's another really interesting, great way, great side effect of having chickens is the food waste.
Yeah. I see it when I visit family members who don't have chickens. The
Mm,
food that they have left over from meals,
hmm
any trimmings from when they're cooking stuff,
hmm
go straight into the trash can.
mm,
And the amount of trash that is
yeah.
staggering.
Yeah.
The amount of food waste that in the United States, they've done studies on this. It's for household waste is more than restaurants, but household waste and restaurants together, it's actually a huge driver of climate change.
Mm,
The amount of food waste that's going into the landfills and then it creates its own gas.
hmm
So, one, landfills are already filling up. So, we're trying not to have that be a thing. And then,
Right.
two, doing everything we can for the climate stabilization.
hmm
So, having chickens for us, we have a lot of birds here, right?
hmm
So, our compost every day is taken out to them and it's gone within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, a family that has 3 to 5 birds, I don't know if those birds will keep up with a family's household waste. It depends on how
Mm,
many people are in the family
hmm
and depends on the breed
hmm
and what time of day they're feeding them.
mm,
I always recommend to have a little compost bucket on the counter, one
hmm
with a charcoal filter. They have them, you've probably seen them around, little silver ones,
hmm
and then fill it up for a day and then take it out to the chickens. And I always recommend giving it to the chickens around 10 to 11 a.m.
Oh.
because then they have the whole day to eat it and then
hmm
it's not going to attract rodents at night.
That makes sense.
If you give it to them first thing in the morning when you're out doing chores, then they're going to expect that every day and they're going to start calling to you like, hey, where's my 7 a.m. treats? And suddenly you've trained them to expect that. When we lived in a different situation, I made that mistake and the birds would come up on our back porch and peck at our back door.
Oh my gosh.
Come on, where's my morning crust of bread?
Yeah. Oh my God, their little personalities. And
Mm-hmm. Stare at us.
another thing about chickens that people I think underestimate or don't expect is they're quite intelligent and they have little personalities. And if you spend enough time with them, if you're kind to them, like it comes out.
It does. They are very smart.
Hmm
I know professional dog trainers who train dogs for folks who have disabilities,
hmm
and the education for that is pretty rigorous.
hmm
When they are being trained to be a trainer themselves, the humans, they first learn how to train a chicken
Oh my
before
gosh.
they work with the dogs
Wow.
because chickens will learn faster than dogs, but
Huh.
their attention span is shorter.
Oh.
So if you as a trainer are able to think ahead of the chicken,
hmm
then you will be able to think ahead of the dog you're going to be training.
Wow.
This lady I knew, she lived in an evacuation zone where there were fires, and she was able to train all her chickens with a little clicker, this little like clicking sound,
hmm
to get into evacuation crates and then just put right into the car. So she wasn't chasing them around. There wasn't any kind of like dangerous
Wow.
situation. They just like marched right into the crates. She put them in the back of the car and they evacuated to safety.
Oh my God, I love that. And
So
I could
chickens are
totally,
actually
yeah, go
super
ahead.
smart.
Yeah, I could totally see that happening.
Mhm.
So funny. I'm just imagining them just like, yep, here we go.
And we're on an adventure.
Yeah. Wow.
But people have this story in their head that chickens aren't smart and that they're just chickens. They almost treat them as if they're like a turnip or a bunch
Mm,
of carrots, like
hmm
produce almost. And
hmm
I think that this is in our culture because it allows us to separate ourselves from them and then
mm.
to put them in situations that are not great.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I could totally see that sort of feedback loop happening and you're like, well, and probably exactly why they ended up in these battery cages.
Exactly. They're not smart. They can't even tell what's going on. They're
Yeah.
fine.
They don't
You know,
care.
yeah, they don't care. They're in this warehouse.
Hmm
My husband has family in Ohio, and there's these mega warehouses out there.
Mm.
Huge. And I was listening to a family member out there say, man, those birds need for nothing in those warehouses. You know, it's the perfect temperature.
Mm.
There's no predators. They're living the life. And I just kind of listened, didn't comment at all.
hmm
But in my heart, I was feeling like, but there's no sunshine.
Right.
There's no access to actual like ground contact of grass.
Mm-hmm.
There's no bugs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, they are safe from being eaten by a raccoon. And straight up, like I pay the wildlife tax here with my birds being outside.
Mm-hmm.
I'll lose, 10, 20 birds a year to different, it's a hawk or a raccoon or a bobcat moving through.
Yeah.
But my birds, I believe I'm giving them the best life possible because they're able to live how they want. They get
Right.
to explore, they get to play with each other, they get to scratch around, they get to chase bugs.
Mm-hmm.
They're they're smart and they deserve so much more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I get some flack online because I do let them just free range all the time. And like you, I do lose them from time to time. And I obviously feel bad when that happens, but for the same reasons, like I keep doing it because they have a good life and they're out there running around and exploring and they're up in the trees and having a great time. And I would so much rather them live that life than a life of confinement, even if it's in, a bigger run, which people have. And again, if that's what you want to do because you can't stand to lose them, then okay. But for me, I think I align with you in that I'd rather them just be outside being chickens.
I think there's a difference between being irresponsible as a chicken owner if a person knows, okay, there's a heavy predation in this one zone
Hmm.
and like putting your coop right next to that zone, that's just not smart.
True.
Like
True. Yeah.
do the best you can for them. Make it so
Hmm.
that predators aren't super like enticed and able just to come up to a chicken buffet, but
Right.
also let them live.
Yeah, totally. And, to that point, like I do my dog that you saw in the beginning, he's a guardian dog. Oh, he's inside right now because he hurt his leg, but
Mm-hmm.
he is out there with them and he takes his job very seriously and he protects them from coyotes and hawks. And I went through this period where there was a heavy coyote predation on them. I don't know what was happening, but so I started to change things and I started to keep them in there. So their door would open from the coop into the run in the morning when the sun rose. And I would close the door to the run at night so that in the morning they're safe in the run because the coyotes were seeming to come like early morning time. And so then I would just let them out of their run at like 8 or 9. And that's been working great. So, to your point, yes, there is risk, but there is a way to mitigate it.
That's beautiful that you were aware of that change and what you could do. Like you were observing when it was happening, early morning. And so
Hmm.
you adjusted your behavior.
Yeah.
And that requires a connection to your flock.
Mm.
That requires someone who's actually paying attention. And this is the important piece to being able to, I think, raise the animals with integrity outside is you got to be present
Hmm.
and not just leave them to their own devices
Hmm.
because predators have nothing but time and everything loves the taste of chicken.
Yeah. And also, like, the predators are just trying to survive too.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
why I call it the wildlife tax. Like, yes, we
Yeah.
lose some birds every year, but those wild animals were here before me.
Hmm.
So if they need some during their seasonal shift, like you said, you weren't sure why all of a sudden with the coyotes. I had the same thing with bobcats.
Hmm.
Oh man, I'm getting hammered right now. What is happening? And I started to
Yeah.
see in early spring and in fall, they're moving through.
Mm.
They're actually like migrating around, and this is like spring. They're starting to have babies. They're wanting to feed
Hmm.
their babies, so I need to be
Hmm.
extra careful. We do the same as you, where we delay the opening of the auto doors.
Mm.
And just that difference made all the difference. And then
Yeah.
the cats move on. They know, okay,
Hmm.
I can't just have an easy meal every morning here.
Right.
Before I
Yeah.
was wise to what was going on, I saw one sitting in a field, and this took me going outside and observing. Like I would go out there from 4 a.m. until
Mm.
sunrise and be like, what is happening? Why am I
Hmm.
losing all these birds? And I
Hmm.
watch this bobcat jump the fence, go right over, sit right in front of an auto door,
Whoa.
and just wait for it to open like it was just hitting that
Wow.
buffet in the morning. I was like, no
Wow.
way. This smart cat. No
Yeah.
fear. So then we just delayed it, delay it by an hour. And then I was like, oh, guess that's not going to open anymore.
Yeah, the cat's like, well, I got other things to do with my day. I can't wait around here.
Totally. There's plenty of rodents and other things around for it to naturally eat.
Yeah. And yeah, I just love that so much because I think another common way that people with chickens handle predators, which is a very common problem, is to then kill the predator. And I don't agree with that method, obviously. I think that they're just trying to survive, so why can't we just adjust what we're doing?
Yeah. There's so many adjustments we can make. And then every now and again, if there's one animal that has, a different behavior to
Hmm.
it,
Sure.
I can understand why some ranchers and some farmers get the permit for that animal to be removed because
Hmm.
sometimes something's different.
Yeah.
I know a lot of farmers around here that raise sheep and they've had issues with lambs being taken and
Mm-hmm.
they don't realize until they're counting. And all of a sudden it's like, gosh, there's, 40 lambs missing. What is happening?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's a different time of year or an animal's moving differently. Who knows?
Hmm.
But gosh, I try not to have judgment on that too. It's hard. It's
Right.
hard.
Yeah, I know. It's really quite difficult. But I think if we can just, as you do with sharing how there's excess roosters in the industry and how those are dealt with, just bringing to light these things and trying not to get into arguments about them. And I think also just understanding, okay, why is it that this person who has all these sheep wants to handle their predator problem this way versus this person, and how are these situations different? And just again coming to that place of there's no judgment on it. Let's just see what works for everybody else.
It requires some patience and a deep breath before responding, you know. We can
Yes.
we can my like mantra for this last year has been like, okay, I'm going to respond and not react. Take a deep breath. If someone says something that like hits me in the heart in a way of like, oof,
Yeah.
I really want it. My knee-jerk reaction is X, but I'm going to take a breath.
Hmm.
Where's the Y here? Okay, there's the Y.
Hmm.
I'm going to respond with the with the
Hmm.
Y and not the X cuz woo.
Yeah, hard to do.
Mm, mhm. Mhm.
Hard to do, but bringing it full circle, I found that in situations like that, or if I'm just feeling really, really triggered one day, or if I'm really stressed, like I will just go out in the pasture and I'll watch my chickens, and all of a sudden things just feel better.
They are there to be our companions and us
Hmm.
to them. They're such an incredible gift for us. And I hope that everybody, if they have the desire, at least in one point in their life, gets to raise them because
Yeah.
I see all of the incredible benefits of having them around. We love having them around.
Hmm.
And it sounds like you do too.
Yes, yeah, I definitely do. And it seems like people online really love to watch them as well. And when people, I'll often be out there like doing chores and stuff, on the phone, trying to, handle two things at once. And I have four roosters. So, it's a constant soundtrack. And even just the hens making their little noises and stuff. I didn't realize this, but people on the phone can hear them. And I just thought, well, the roosters make sense, but the hens, I didn't think really people could hear that much. But often people will stop talking and be like, wait, what is that noise? Like it's so soothing. And it's the hens just, having their little conversations with each other.
Hmm. Yeah. I've experienced that same if I'm doing a customer service call with like I need to change a banking information or something. People are like,
Hmm.
wait, where are you?
Yeah. And the other day I was actually on like a really pretty serious phone call, and so I have two of your roosters, and then I have a milfer, and then I have like a full size Easter egger rooster. And that guy, I didn't realize because I'm like, on the phone distracted, came right next to me and crowed. So it was really quite loud. And I was like, oh, sorry. And they're like, no, actually, that was really quite nice.
Hmm. I think it shows that so many of us are separated from the land and our food sources, but the land and that simpler time of, a lot of people paint this picture of things being slow and simple on a farm. They are not. There's a lot of work.
Yes.
But when the chores are done and it's been a full day of working hard and moving our bodies and tending to the animals, there's something so soul fulfilling about that
Hmm.
where I can lay down and think that was a good day.
Totally.
Like that was a day that I feel like I lived the way I want to live. And I think people when they hear roosters crowing on the phone, they crave that. There's a piece of them somewhere that knows like this is a really sweet life if we're willing to take it on.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I have people who come to visit here too, like friends and family, and they mostly live in cities. And when they come here, I'm like, sorry if you hear some roosters in the morning, but not a single person has ever been like, oh, that rooster woke me up. They're like, I had the best night's sleep and I just feel so relaxed here. And I just think that's so great. And really, I didn't expect it when I first moved here because I think that there's a common also association with people getting annoyed with roosters crowing, but I've found it to be the opposite. And my neighbors are a little far away, but they can still hear them for sure. And nobody has said anything.
I
Yeah.
love that people come to you and feel at peace. That's
Yeah.
a great testament to how you're holding space with your animals and holding space for other people to see what's possible.
Thanks. Yeah, it is nice to offer that. Just like I'm sure you find joy in offering these chickens to everybody and how those chickens fulfill people's lives in very different ways.
I've been amazed over the years because, of course, I've seen them through the lens of my mind.
Hmm.
But having a decade of I do all the customer service, so I get all the emails. I help people with their orders. I'm out there with the birds. Like we're fully vertically integrated here. Like we do it all.
Hmm.
There's no outsourcing of other farms or things. It's all here in house. We ship everything. We
Hmm.
hatch here. We ship from here. All of it.
Yeah.
So my hands are in every bit of it, and I get to hear people's reactions, especially during COVID,
Mm.
to having chickens, where people were home and they were able to be with them. Things I would have never thought. Like one mom who wrote to me who was in tears because she was so worried about her son's mental health from not being able to be with his friends.
Mm.
She was concerned for his life.
Oh, wow.
The chickens gave him a reason to get up and to get
Mm.
outside.
Mm.
And she was so blown away at how fast things turned around for his mental space by having that rhythm. And that was so powerful for me and made me realize like sometimes there's moments of having a business that are challenging
Yeah.
or there's things I have to rise to the occasion to that feel like a lot. But when I get an email like that, I'm like, you know what? I'm living what I'm supposed to be living and I'm giving what I'm supposed to be giving to this world, even if it doesn't always make perfect sense to me.
Hmm.
There are people's lives I don't realize are being helped by this. And
Hmm.
that gives me a reason to get up every day.
Wow. Yeah, that is so powerful and so special. And those connections are exactly why I decided to start this podcast and talk to people across different areas to discover that and really try to understand what it is about whatever animal we're talking about and how we relate to them and the ways that they shape our lives. And that is just, yeah, it's just so beautiful. And who would think that a little chicken could do so much?
Agreed. Chickens, in particular, as opposed to other livestock animals or other pets, are really powerful for our circadian rhythms as humans
Oh.
because they ask us to get up in the morning to let them out, and we need to
Hmm.
tuck them in at night to make sure they're safe.
Mm.
And there's something so powerful for our human brains to see sunlight in the morning and a sunset.
Mm.
It resets our internal clock. The
Mm.
birds get us outside and moving to be doing chores.
Hmm.
They lay us these beautiful eggs. They're giving us a gift too, which is kind of like a little dopamine hit for our brain,
True.
something healthy for us.
Hmm.
There's all those good beneficial microbes of just working with animals outside. For kids, it's something that is great for them to get them off of screens and outside. It's a
Yeah.
smaller animal they can work with,
Hmm.
cows, goats, they're bigger and not everybody has space for that. But
True.
these small breeds like you have, the Cerama, like people can have them in an urban setting.
Hmm.
People can have them in their house eating popcorn.
Yeah, it's true.
There's a chicken breed for everybody to get us outside and moving and connected to nature.
Hmm.
So many gifts that we don't realize when we first have them. The
Yeah.
food scraps they eat, the droppings and compost from their bedding they leave behind that inspire us to have a garden. They're kind of this
Hmm.
gateway animal. One thing leads to another
Yes,
when we
people
have them.
often say that. You start with chickens and then all of a sudden you're way over here, with some project that you didn't expect.
Yeah, for people first getting into homesteading or like small, like gentleman farming,
Hmm.
chickens are the perfect first animal.
Mm.
Veterinary care is pretty straightforward and simple for them. They're
Hmm.
just, they're incredible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, I feel like we could talk for about chickens forever, you and I. But one way that I'm kind of experimenting with ending these episodes is asking the guest for a fun fact about the animal that we've been talking about. So we've shared a lot of knowledge about chickens, but is there one fun fact that you think people could walk away from and maybe share with someone else and share how great chickens are?
There are so many.
Yes, I bet.
A first one can I share a couple?
Sure, yeah.
The first one that comes to my head that I think is really fun for kids to know is that there are more bones in the neck of a chicken than there are a giraffe.
Oh,
You look at a giraffe and you think, wow, they must have so many bones in their neck.
yeah.
Chickens have really long necks,
Mm.
but they're kind of tucked up and back into their body a little bit, so you can't see that.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
A lesser known fact that's really interesting is that it is the hen that determines the gender of the chicks, not the rooster. A rooster will always self-replicate males, and the hen determines which gender will be in the egg. There's a couple other creatures on planet Earth that do this. Moths do this, butterflies do it, and chickens. I think there's another creature, but I'm forgetting.
So is it that the hen will always do one or the other, or does it switch?
Oh, that'd be cool if you could find a hen that only laid female eggs.
Yeah, that would probably then the industry would probably just like replicate that one forever.
There are, so for people who do pay attention, you have some hobbyists who are like, oh yeah, this hen, she always gives me a lot of roosters. And they just kind of like share that information anecdotally. But if you paid attention, yes, that hen might favor one or the other. But a rooster is always going to be replicating male.
Interesting.
Isn't that cool?
Yes. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you do need a rooster for fertile eggs. So that's kind of, so I gave like a good like child one, and I gave a good like, wow, this is like a really out there one. And like one that's in between that I feel like anybody can appreciate is that chickens sleep with one eye open. Half of their brain is awake at all times.
Interesting.
And this is, I think, to pay attention for predators
Mm-hmm.
because they call it unihemispheric sleep. I'll try and say that 5 times fast.
Yeah.
Where one eye is left open and the other side of the brain is awake. And then they go back and forth.
Yeah, that is neat. And that,
Right?
yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, like so my coop is like a big tough shed and they have their little door that goes outside and then the 2 doors open. Then I just keep it open during the day with like a wire gate in there so they can get sun in there and, I can like walk by and see them and all type of stuff. But at night I'll close those 2 double doors, but I do that at like various times depending on what I'm doing. And sometimes, it ends up being late at night and I go over, I look up and some of them are like wide awake and some of them are asleep. And I'm like, you guys are just all over the place with your sleep patterns here, but that does make sense because
If
they
you could see
probably
both
are.
sides of their face, one eye would be closed.
Yeah.
So maybe they're looking at you with the one eye.
Right. Yeah, because they're like something's happening on this side of me. Yeah, I'll have to pay attention to that.
Now you know.
Yeah, that's cool. Hmm. And also
I'm
just
sharing about them. There's so many cool facts that could go on and
yeah,
on.
I bet. And that also just reminded me that when people see them, like talk about reactions to chickens and connections, when people see them in that coop at night, they just like 9 times out of 10, people have a reaction that's something like, "Oh my God, like look at them all just roosting." Like it's just a deep emotion comes over people where they're just like mesmerized by it and they just think it's so cool how they just come in and they know what to do and they're just so peaceful up there and little do they know they're like half awake.
It's the quintessential farm scene to see hens sleeping or a hen on the nest.
Yeah, and it's so cute when they tuck their little head in and like they do appear to be like fully asleep. So sweet.
The little sounds they make too.
Yeah, they're so cute.
They have over 30 vocalizations.
Oh,
Another fun fact between the hens
that's
and the roosters that mean totally different things.
yeah. Wow.
hmm
Yeah, they're so cool.
It's been really fun chatting chicken with you.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Thank you for doing this.
We covered a lot of topics.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. Hopefully it was eye-opening for people because I do think the chicken world is something that people are fascinated with and also just don't really know a lot about.
Totally. But a very little known but vast world that is so worth diving into. There's so much here.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Thank you so much for taking the time with me. It was really fun.
Cool. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Human Animals. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. I'll be back next time to dive deeper into the fascinating world of human-animal connections. Until then, take a moment to appreciate the animals in your life and tell them I said hi. You can get to know me and my animals better and see upcoming guests by following @Brian Kangle, that's BrianKangal, on Instagram and TikTok. Okay, bye!